I watched from the hill as the bulldozers crawled across my grandfather's field like metal locusts. Their engines screamed, blades carving through the soil that had fed my family for 3 generations. The city called it Progress, the Brightwood Green Space and Dog Recreation Initiative. To me, it was theft wearing a friendly smile. They offered me $410,000 for 87 acres that had been appraised at nearly twice that. When I refused, the council chair, Diane Mercer, leaned back in her chair and said, "Ethan, you can't stop progress. The people want this." She meant people. She meant donors. That land wasn't just dirt. It was my family's story written in rows of corn and maple trees that my grandfather, Walter, had planted after coming home from the war in 1948. He built the red barn himself, hammering nails at dusk when the cicadas sang. My father turned the place into a small organic operation long before organic became a supermarket label. I was 12 when I first drove a tractor, and 60 when I watched that same tractor sink into the mud as the demolition crews rolled in. My wife, Anna, used to say that the smell of turned soil was the smell of honest living. She passed away 5 years before all this began, but I could still hear her voice whenever I stepped outside at dawn. So when the city decided that the Garrett farm, the oldest working property in the county, was better suited for a dog park than for growing food, I took it personally. They said it would be good for the community. I was the community. But progress has a way of forgetting its roots. The official notice arrived in a cream envelope with a gold city seal. Eminent domain acquisition notice. I read it 3 times before I understood it was real. They were taking my land whether I signed or not. The offer was an insult, but the insult was the point. They wanted to show they could. The justification: public use for recreational enhancement. My lawyer, Henry Clark, told me not to waste my money fighting. They've greased every wheel, Ethan. The vote was done before the motion even hit the table. That night I sat on the porch, the papers spread out beside my coffee mug, listening to the coyotes howling beyond the fence line. Anna would have told me to fight smart, not angry. She always said that when people with power steal from you, the only thing that scares them is someone who understands how their game works. I decided to learn. Diane Mercer had moved to Brightwood 8 years earlier from the coast. She called herself a reformer, but she was a developer with lipstick on. Her husband owned Mercer Construction, the same firm that, conveniently, had won the contract for the dog park. At the council hearing, she wore a white blazer and a smile that looked printed on. "Mr. Garrett," she said, "we appreciate your heritage, but nostalgia doesn't pay tax revenue." Everyone laughed politely. I didn't. I looked at her and said, "You can pave over field, Diane, but you can't buy what built it." She slammed the gavel and adjourned the meeting. 3 weeks later, the bulldozers arrived. They started with the barn, my grandfather's barn, the one he built from oak he milled himself. I thought I prepared myself for that moment. But when the roof caved in and the dust rose into morning sun, I felt something tear inside me. A news crew filmed the historic redevelopment. Diane posed for photos, latte in hand. The headline the next day read, "They called me uncooperative." Online, strangers called me greedy. It didn't matter that the city paid half the value or that my workers, 6 local families, had lost their jobs. The narrative was written. I spent the next week in silence, walking the boundary lines at night with a flashlight. That's when I noticed something odd on the county map. A thin gray strip of road that ended right at my property line. The only access road into what would soon become the dog park. Most people think roads belong to the city. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't. That gray strip wasn't a public road at all. It was an easement, granted decades ago by neighboring landowners so the county could reach the back lots. Easements expire if they aren't renewed. Theirs had expired 2 years earlier. That meant once my land became the city's dog park, there would be no legal way to reach it. No trucks, no parking, no construction access, nothing. I drove straight to the county records office the next morning, coffee in one hand, determination in the other. The clerk, a woman named Linda, helped me dig through archives that smelled like mildew and ink. The more I looked, the clearer it became. 3 tiny properties surrounded my former farm. all privately owned, all holding the only ways in or out. And every one of them was for sale. I didn't sleep that night. My savings, what was left after Anna's hospital bills, came to just under $350,000. Buying those properties would nearly wipe me out. But I could hear Anna's voice again. Fight smart. The first parcel was an old orchard, overgrown and forgotten. The owner, a widow named Trish, was moving to Florida. She wanted $95,000. I paid in cash and used a shell company, Garrett Agricultural Holdings, LLC, to keep my name off the record. The second property belonged to the county itself, tied up in unpaid taxes. $22,000 cleared the lien. Paperwork filed, title quieted, deed transferred. The third was a scrubby 12-acre patch owned by a retired mechanic named Dale. He wanted $180,000. He was also Diane's poker buddy. So I didn't buy it as Ethan Garrett. My daughter did. Claire flew in from Chicago, dressed in a sharp suit, told Dale she was scouting rural investment opportunities. He dropped the price to $165,000, charmed by her smile. 3 properties, 3 access points, all mine. By the time Diane's team celebrated their victory groundbreaking, they didn't realize the park they'd stolen was completely landlocked. Corrupt people don't take humiliation quietly. The moment Diane discovered the problem, her office went into overdrive. Code enforcement officers visited my rental house and cited me for a mailbox that was 6 inches off regulation height. Then came a sudden environmental complaint about chemical runoff. Ironic, since I've farmed organic for 12 years. They found nothing, but the rumor alone painted me as toxic. The local paper ran a piece titled, "Farmers Greed Stalls Dog Park Project." The reporter was one of Diane's donors. I responded the only way I knew how, with sunlight. I created a page called Brightwood Truth, posted public records, council votes, property deeds. I showed the world how every contract went to Mercer Construction and how Diane's husband billed the city double for consulting. People started to pay attention. Former business owners she'd squeeze came forward. One had lost his hardware store to make room for a cousin's cafe. Another's diner had been rezoned out of existence. Together, we formed the Brightwood Property Alliance. Farmers, shop owners, teachers, people she'd underestimated. As the alliance grew, so did Diane's desperation. She tried to push an emergency motion to seize my new properties under eminent domain again. My lawyer filed a federal injunction before the ink dried. Then came the fire. One night around 2 a.m, my storage barn, the one I'd built after Anna died, went up in flames. The fire chief said it looked accelerated. The security camera caught a pickup truck leaving. The plates traced back to a contractor who worked for Mercer Construction. I didn't release that footage right away. Not yet. Timing was everything. Claire helped me dig deeper. She worked in corporate finance, and if Diane was dirty, there'd be money trails. Within a week, we found them. Municipal bonds issued for $3 million, but only $2.3 million allocated construction. The rest marked as administrative costs. Guess whose law partner got paid $400,000 for environmental review? Guess whose company pocketed the difference? Diane's fingerprints were everywhere. We filed formal complaints with the State Ethics Board and the Attorney General's office. Claire drafted them in legal language sharp enough to cut glass. Then we sent an anonymous copy to Marcus Hill, an investigative journalist known for tearing down corrupt officials like tissue paper. He spent days verifying every document. When he called me back, his first words were, "This is going to blow the lid off your whole county." We agreed he'd publish the morning of the groundbreaking ceremony, Diane's big public victory. She'd invited local TV, the governor's office, donors, everyone. I wanted her to fall in front of cameras. The night before, I sent the sheriff's office the fire footage and witness statements. Then I slept for the first time in weeks. The sun rose cold and clear. I stood by the locked gate of what used to be my farm, now officially Brightwood Dog Park. Behind me, 50 neighbors held handmade signs. Save local farms. Progress without corruption. News vans lined the road. Reporters smelled blood. At 7:45 a.m., Diane's black SUV pulled up. She stepped out wearing a tailored suit and that same smug smile. Cameras flashed. She spotted me at the gate and marched over, microphone crews following. "Mr. Garrett," she said sweetly, "this is a public event. Kindly open the gate." I raised the deed in my hand. "This road is private property. You'll need written permission to cross it." Her smile stiffened. "The city has rights of way." "Expired," I interrupted, "as of 2 years ago. You never renewed them." The city attorney leaned in, whispered something. I watched her face drain of color. Then Marcus Hill's phone alert pinged across the crowd. His article had just gone live. The headline blared: "Mayor's wife profits from public project. $800,000 missing in Brightwood bonds." The murmurs turned to gasps. Reporters scrambled to read. The sheriff stepped forward with a manila envelope. "Ms. Mercer," he said, "you've been served. The Attorney General's office requests your immediate cooperation in an active investigation." Cameras clicked like machine guns. She stammered, "This is political sabotage." Then Tyler, one of her former employees, stepped from the crowd holding a microphone. "She ordered us to damage Mr. Garrett's irrigation system," he said. "I have the messages to prove it." The crowd erupted. Diane lunged at him, screaming, before the sheriff held her back. Her husband tried to lead her away, but the reporters swarmed. In less than 10 minutes, her empire collapsed under the weight of her own greed. A week later, the city rescinded the eminent domain order. The Attorney General filed 7 charges: fraud, embezzlement, destruction of public records, abuse of authority, and conspiracy. Diane resigned within 48 hours. Mercer Construction lost every city contract. State investigators uncovered 3 more rigged projects. I didn't keep the access properties. Instead, I donated them to the county under one condition: they'd remain agricultural conservation land forever. No pavement, no development. Brightwood's new council, made up of people who'd stood with me that day, voted unanimously to turn the planned dog park into a community garden and farmer's market. They named it the Anna Garrett Greenway. The first season, I helped plant tomatoes in raised beds where the bulldozers once stood. Children ran between rows with watering cans. Old farmers shared seeds. The air smelled like earth again, honest, living earth. Sometimes people ask me if it was worth it. The stress, the fire, the sleepless nights. I tell them this: you can't buy integrity and you can't bulldoze justice. They took my land, but in the end, they built my wife's dream instead. So if you're watching this and you've ever been steamrolled by power or paperwork, remember, public records are public. Everything they hide is sitting in plain sight, waiting for someone brave enough to look. Because corruption fears one thing more than anything else: sunlight.